Welcome, Synth-Pop fans, to the soul of Synth-Pop. And we are kicking off the next series of the Spotlight series that, of course, we do, May and I, to introduce all of you, the awesome Synth-Pop fans out there, give you a little bit of a better look into the hearts and minds of some of the most influential and up-and-coming indie Synth-Pop stars that are out there. And May, we're getting ready to kick off episode number 306. How about those apples?
Woohoo! That's a good number.
Right on. And how are you doing, May? Good to see you.
Besides feeling like I got beat with a stick by my sadistic physical therapist today, I'm doing pretty good. Got the jelly legs, but it's all for moving forward and getting, being able to move, period, forward, pretty much. Yeah. Doing
Well,
pretty good though.
we're glad you made it.
I am too.
Right on. Well, let me go ahead and introduce the amazing guest that I am extremely excited and pleased to welcome to the soul of Synth-Pop. This is an artist whose music I discovered about 2 years ago and have absolutely fallen in love with the sound that he has. He's got such a unique, incredible sound that has just a fantastic David Bowie kind of vibe to it that I absolutely adore. And of course, that would be the artist known as Sadkin. And with us, joining us today is Max Molesky, the man, the myth, the legend behind Sadkin. Max, how are you doing, buddy?
Jim, I am well. Outstanding. I'm so glad to be here tonight. May, good evening. Hello to you both.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. And Max, you're based out of is it Minneapolis? Is that right?
I was born in Minneapolis. I live in tropical Duluth, Minnesota on the icy shores of Lake Superior now.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
Right on. Well, of course, Minneapolis has such a rich history in music. I mean, quite obviously, one of the first places that people go to think of when they mention Minneapolis, of course, is Prince. But of course, there was also Morris Day and the Time back in the 80s, around that same time, and some very dear friends of mine. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Were kind of like an 80s R&B pop band known as the Jets that
Oh,
were also from the Minneapolis area. So
yeah.
what a rich history. And May, how can we forget Information Society, right?
That's
So
right.
all kinds of great musical heritage there out of Minnesota. So Max, tell us a little bit about how you got started creating music. Did you come from like a musical family, or how did your journey begin as far as music goes?
Yeah. Well, so I've been watching these videos that you have been producing, and I'm afraid that some of my background is very, very similar to some of the other artists. I don't know if that is, or you're going to find that as a constant thread with the type of artists that make synth pop music or not. But yeah, you could almost cut and paste different aspects of like Christopher Anton, Martin Bailey, anything box, all of those things. You could almost create Max's background with what they said. I did come from a musical family. My grandmother played bass and keyboards. My grandfather played pedal steel guitar. My dad was a drummer. I was born into a family that played country western music. And
Nice.
so my first instrument was a hand-me-down drum set from my dad, an old silver Ludwig. And yeah, I first started just pounding away on pans, imitating my dad, and grew up like my first records were Waylon Jennings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very far away from most
Outlaw
other
country.
records.
I love it.
Yeah, so we'd go to the bars and help him set up his drum set before he'd play. We'd have block parties and people would come over, and it'd be big to-dos. And yeah, my earliest musical influence was my family and then country western. So that's kind of where it started. He also, but he can't. He was a kid in the '70s, so he also had some rock and roll records. I remember he had Black Sabbath with Iron Man on it, and I would ask him to play it over and over and over again. He also had Iron Butterflies and the God of Davida.
Right.
That song when a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old hears that, that is some spooky business.
Right.
That freaked me out. That was one of those weird things that kids do where I was really genuinely scared when I heard it, but then I would ask him to play it again.
Right.
I don't know. So yeah, he had a rock background, but had become immersed in country western music, just playing all the Legions, the VFWs all around Minnesota, the Midwest area. So yeah, I grew up with that, and then my mom and dad did get a divorce, and that impacts someone when they're about 8 years old, and um, what had happened, I think, when a kid goes through that, I think there's a part of them that finds themselves, they feel a little bit on an island. Or as I'm talking to you about this right now, Jim, I'm maybe a Dr. Jim, the therapist here, realizing this for the first time. I kind of felt alone on an island, and maybe there's a little harboring of emotions. And so my mom started seeing another, who became my stepdad, and I very quickly had an older stepbrother.
Mhm.
And he introduced me to a whole new genre of music that I could not imagine exists. He had this Duran Duran, Seven and Ragged Tiger. He had this Michael Jackson Thriller. He had Corey Hart. He had U2. He had something called the Thompson Twins. All of these things. When I was going through that, that became like I attached myself to that. Like I wanted that to print on me. Does that make any sense? It was sort of a little
Absolutely.
bit
Yeah.
of a response to the family situation. And I love my dad. I love that he was a musician. I'm proud of my family for that. I was proud of them at that time. But when I discovered this universe that I never knew existed, and it had such an exotic sound to me, it was so escapist. It was a long ways away from Waylon Jennings, and I was totally taken with it. So then my mom moved, and she told me, where we're going, you're going to be splitting rooms with your new stepbrother. There's not going to be room for your drum set. My dad was not having it. So that following Christmas, he asked, well, is there another instrument you'd be interested in? And a lot like Christopher Anton, I was so taken with John Taylor and Duran Duran. And I thought, well, moving from drums to bass seems like a thing. There was no way I was going to get even an entry-level synthesizer as much as I thought Nick Rhodes was the bomb. But so yeah, I got a little harmony bass, a little intro bass, hand-me-down amp from my grandma, and I was off and running. My brother that same year then got a cheap generic guitar, didn't even have a brand on the headstock. And so we spent a lot of nights just playing along to Duran Duran records. He also had Synchronicity. We loved the Police, so we play along to that. That, if you were a fly on the wall, that would be a nightmare, because that is some serious music going on there. And we did not have the aptitude to keep up with what Andy Summers was doing. But yeah, my mom was nice enough to get us some music lessons at the local music store. And I would show up there and I'd walk into the music room, and there would be pictures of Jaco Pastorius, there would be Terry Bozzio, all of these musicians. And I would say, I want to learn Hungry Like the Wolf. And that poor guy, I can imagine, he wanted.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
I can
that's
relate.
kind of what
I can so relate. Yes.
Mhm. So yeah, that's kind of how it started for me. I kept with it. My brother, not so much. He was the older stepbrother, and he would give me a hard time. He would go to his mom's every other week. He would put his guitar under the bed and say, "Don't touch it." Of course, I touched it, and so I would get my bass out, get out his guitar, I'd be playing, and he, just like stepbrothers, he would come back. Somebody's been touched. Who were you playing my guitar? So I don't. Do you know the movie?
Uh,
Oh, it's a Will Ferrell movie with John C. Reilly.
Step Brothers. Yeah,
Yes, he had the drum set.
that's
Yeah,
right.
so in my house it was the electric guitar.
Right.
So yeah, at that point it was I remember riding my bike up to a Radio Shack and buying like a 4-channel realistic mixer.
Hmm.
Uh, I was so excited. I'd heard that there was a sale at a local guitar center where I could buy a overdrive pedal for $40 that weekend.
Hmm.
So I had like a guitar, I had an overdrive pedal. Somebody at school sold me a cheap Ibanez chorus pedal. I eventually saved up for a DoD digital delay.
Oh yeah.
I also bought like this Kawaii consumer keyboard at, I don't, it might have been Target or Best Buy. Do you have Best Buy where you're at?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was off and running. I had a tape deck, a couple guitar pedals, a bass, keyboard that could play generic 8 beats and 16 beats, and the world was my oyster. So that, yeah, that's how it started.
Wow, that is awesome. I got to do a couple of callbacks to what you just uh, told us about. I mean, first and foremost, your music background as far as some of the music that you were exposed to. I mean, everything from Inagata Davida, all what 15 minutes of it, and again the Waylon Jennings, and then having your stepbrother who was into all of the just amazing 80s music at the time. Um, that's such a wonderful, rich tapestry of music history that you have there that you were exposed to from that early age, and of course that environment of having a parent that was a live performer, coming from a musical family. That's just extraordinary. That's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. To me, it was just a path that was laid in front of me, and it was something that um, captivated my imagination, and I was so excited. I couldn't believe people could make songs like "New Moon on Monday," and I started piecing them apart, learning about trying to educate myself a little bit about song structure, what it meant to have different song sections, why was the chorus different than the verses, how come the second verse was slightly different than the first verse, then these middle 8 I was in school. I was studying these records, whether it was Violator, Kick, Sign of the Times. All of those records were really important to me in that time.
Yeah, and speaking of Seven and the Ragged Tiger and Duran Duran of that era, I have to ask because Duran Duran, I believe it was either a sound engineer or a producer whose name was Alex Sadkin. So does your name Sadkin happen to stem from that,
And
Alex Sadkin?
I'm so glad you asked, Jim. Yeah. So the story on
Awesome.
that
That
is
is so cool.
That is
Sorry,
cool.
I'm a total geek about stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I am too. I love it. I got to the point with my music nerddom that I was buying some records based on who is the producer in the back. Now, this happened when I was much older.
Mhm.
It was around the early 2000s. I had gotten a record player, hadn't had a record player, and since I was listening to Waylon Jennings, and so I started doing. I was at that point. I had gotten a synthesizer. I'd gotten an Ensoniq SD1. I'd gotten an Sonic ASR10. I was a full blown keyboard sampling.
Nice.
That that was that era, late '90s and into the 2000s. And so part of that was going to uh, uh, record stores and diving into the bins and finding samples or things that were interesting. And at that time, I remember buying, I think there was the early Thompson Twins records that I'd never seen before when I was growing up. And they were actually, I think they were produced by Steve Lillywhite, and they had this huge drum sound. And it was so strange to hear Thompson Twins as a like 7 or 8 piece, have this huge drum sound. There were drum breaks at the beginning. So of course I sampled those, and um, I was starting to buy records based on who produced them. I knew that Hugh Padgham had started producing Sting, yes, but
Yeah.
then I was going through record bins, flipping over some band I vaguely knew something about, barely, called XTC, and sure enough, Hugh Padgham. So I buy like English Settlement, brought that home, and like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Jason and the Argonauts. Oh,
Yeah.
so in that process, I started rebuying old Duran Duran records, and flipped them over, saw Alex Sadkin, and then I came across the Thompson Twin records, Into the Gap, Sidekicks,
Sadkin.
and saw Alex Sadkin
Mhm.
buying Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues on vinyl, mixing engineer Alex Sadkin,
Yep.
Grace Jones, who actually XTC, he had mixed some XTC songs. And I thought, man, this guy has a sound too. It's very clean and very opulent. And it all coalesced when I found this album called Arcadia So Red the Rose, which was
Oh,
a
yes.
Duran Duran splinter group. And I got so into that in the late 2000s. That's all I could listen to was this So Red the Rose record.
Mhm.
And when I started doing some new demos, I was coming up with whatever ideas and just needed to save them. That's it. I needed to save them, put them in a file folder, called something on my PC, and I just called the file folder Sadkin, and so that's where it started. And then it kind of carried over, and I kept daring myself to continue to call it Sadkin, and so that's where it comes from.
That's just too cool. I mean, I love that because yeah, some of my favorite records from the 80s had Alex Sadkin involved in the process in some way, shape, or form, particularly that glorious Thompson Twins Into the Gap album, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. And just yeah, he has such a clean production style that just, as a producer myself, that's the kind of sound that I would love to aspire to, is to get that classic sound that either Sadkin or somebody like Rupert Hine. You mentioned Hugh Padgham, who of course produced my absolute favorite Genesis album, Invisible Touch.
Oh,
And I mean, he's another guy that just an amazing producer, Hugh Padgham. Just yeah, wow. Hats off to you, sir. You know exactly you know what's up, man.
I'm trying. It took me a while. It's a late bloomer, but eventually I figured out who the heck this Brian Eno was, Daniel Lanois,
Yep.
Lily White. All of those became very important to my record buying days there. Again, this didn't happen, when I was 10. This happened much later in life. And but I got tuned into it, and I loved hearing these Steve Lillywhite drums. I loved hearing the abstractions of Eno. I loved what the grittiness that Lanois brought to Gabriel and U2 records, along with Eno. I loved it. And so, but Alex, he passed on too early. He had just finished doing the Boom Crash opera record with Onion Skin. Do you remember that at all?
Yes. Oh heavens, yes. I love that song.
I do
Love it.
too. I do too. That was the last thing he had done, and he died in a motorcycle accident. So he was never, I don't think, ever quite celebrated in the way some of these other producers have subsequently been celebrated. So
I completely agree. Completely agree.
Wow.
That's too cool. And I love how you also mentioned that at one point you had an Ensoniq ASR10 and an SD1. The ASR10 to this day remains one of my absolute favorite sampler slash workstation bits of gear. I think in my lifetime I've owned something like close to 5 or 6 of them because
whoa.
I just got so comfortable working within that environment. This is, of course, long before I made the jump into software based recording and whatnot. But I'm still to this day a huge fan of the old Ensoniq samplers and synthesizers. I loved, speaking of anything box, Claude. That extraordinary Peace album was made almost entirely with a Ensoniq ESQ1, and just such a great classic digital sound that those old Ensoniq synthesizers had and still have. Just loved them, absolutely loved them.
Yeah, they do have a sound. Those converters on the ASR10. And I don't know if you went so far as to get like one of those SCSI glyph drives,
Oh
you could
yes,
almost bounce a stereo master inside of it. And the stereo, it would have to be about like 3 minutes and 20 seconds, if memory serves, at
sounds about
16.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I had a suitcase full of floppy disks, and I was off and running. Yeah.
That's awesome. Man, so I got to tell you, the very first song that I remember hearing from you, this would have been, I'm guessing about the spring of 2022, was your track Mirage. And the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds, at least musically, the music composition of it sounded like classic Tears for Fears, like something that could have been lifted right off of the songs from the Big Char album. And it just kind of has that almost galloping type of
Mhm.
a feel to it. So
Yeah.
May, was that also your first
Yeah.
introduction to Sadkin?
Yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't. No, the Hologram Hearts was, but
Ah, okay.
in listening to the Carrera album, yeah, Mirage just right off. There's this Tears for Fears feel going on, and I think the whole album overall is very oh goodness, it could be the, soundtrack for a John Hughes film because it just has that so 80s feel, and it's so unique. Your sound is so unique and so it's almost quirky. We're like looking at like a blend between a John Hughes film and like Labyrinth, just the
Hmm.
music. And I especially like what's what Breaking Glass because it's so theatric. it
You
just
do.
it's it seems like a number in a stage musical, I think. But yeah, just it's all to me that album is just overall just it's a very unique sound, and there's almost some parts where there's like a almost like a carnival eeriness going on, and I think that you have fun with your voice. That's the other thing I hear. It's
Yes.
just that Bowie-esque and just take off and playing with your voice the way you do. I think it's just really fascinating. So yeah, I
Man,
really enjoyed that.
that means a lot to me. I want to circle back to Tears for Fears. Now, that band was very important to me, and that was among the albums my brother and I shared growing up.
Mhm.
And Mirage is on the second Sadkin record, and when I got to working on it, it was in a straight 4/4. But I thought, you know what? Why don't I try doing something different? And then I got this wild idea that nobody has done that time signature for a long time, and there have been a number of songs aside from Everybody Wants to Rule the World that have that time signature. In fact, Roland and Kurt have gone on record saying they lifted that whole feel of the rhythm from a Simple Minds song. And
Mm.
The Disappointed by XTC is in that time signature. Personal Jesus
Right.
by Depeche Mode veers into that time signature. Um, there's that Michael Jackson hit, The Way You Make Me Feel. I think that one is in
Right.
that
Right.
same
Sounds
the
about right.
same kind of shuffle. So
Hmm.
I thought back around 2021 or so when I was first demoing it, I changed the time from 4/4 to is it 12/8? I'd
12
have
8
to
sound 12 8 sounds about right. Yeah.
and I thought, oh, nobody's done this. And it took me forever to get the record out. And 2 months before I got Carrera, that record with that song on, Tears for Fears comes up with the tipping point, and the first single off that is in that shuffle beat as as a
Hmm.
overture, as a nod to Everybody Wants to Rule the World. So
Right.
not that I was going to steal the thunder, I wasn't, but I thought nobody's done this in a long, long time. So but thank you. Yeah, that song meant a lot to me. That was that song came out of the pandemic, and a lot of the headlines and things that we had to endure in this country during that time period about getting along and finding a way that we can do this and lift each other up instead of pull each other down. And
Yeah.
so that's a lot what that song is about. As far as singing, Bowie has become my absolute influence. When I first got introduced to this style of music as a kid, I told you all the artists my brother had introduced me to, and then I would read in magazine articles, different artists, especially Duran Duran. I was always chasing down the Duran Duran stories, and I would hear mention of they were inspired by Bowie, they were inspired by Roxy Music, they were inspired by Japan. I didn't care. I didn't know. I was 9, 10 years old. All I cared about was Duran Duran. It took a long time, and eventually I finally got it. I mean, I remember Let's Dance. on the radio when I was a kid, and it was all good, but it wasn't the reflex. And it's funny the way you can be so particular as a kid, but you know, I now, all these years looking back, I think the most beautiful produced record is Avalon for me. I love the way that record sounds.
More than
I
this. Oh, good
yeah.
heavens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And as the span of it, the arc of his career, David Bowie has become the focal point. Now, to me, I get why why he was so important to Duran Duran and to so many others, and to the Cure, to I mean countless others. And so I've really explored that ground. Um, and just welcomed it. And I wanted to sound just like Martin Bailey wanted to sound like the singer from Aha. I wish that I had sounded like Simon Le Bon, and I realized that my voice didn't sound like that. I could kind of go into this Bowie thing that felt good, but when I was really doing my own voice, it took me a long time to find my voice, by the way, a long time, and I'm still working on it. It's still a process, but I finally thought, hey, this Mark Hollis, I kind of feel like I kind of sound like the guy from Talk Talk a little bit,
Yep.
or sometimes David from Japan, just a little bit, and sometimes my falsetto, I'll think, oh, I think I'm hitting on a little Brian Ferry action here. So it was never quite what I intended, but later in life, those are the artists that I've embraced, and now I see why Duran Duran loved Roxy Music and David Bowie and Japan, and I'm okay with the fact that I don't sound like Simon Le Bon, you know, that's all right, or certainly not Billy Idol or Roland Orzabal or anything quite like that. But yeah, so that I've been chasing that. I've been inviting that into the sound, the Bowie, Tears for Fears, all of that.
Well, I would dare say there's nobody that I'm currently aware of, except May, perhaps the Vistonauts, and that's an indie band that I'm going to have to turn you on to,
Yeah.
Max. That's a local band here in Salt Lake City. In fact, I'm going to see the Vistonauts, or actually the main lead singer from the Vistonauts is this wonderful gentleman by the name of Tom Larson, and he has this David Bowie cover band that's called Major Tom and the Moon Boys, and they're actually putting on a free David Bowie tribute concert tomorrow night that
Mhm.
I'm going to be going to see. So I'm excited to see that. But um, yeah, Max, your voice is, and I'm trying to find the best way to articulate this, but in particularly in the realm of indie synth pop, there are so many singers that are trying to emulate Dave Gahan of Depeche
Mhm.
Mode. And because of that, it's particularly one of my biggest complaints about a lot of synth pop, particularly coming from Europe, is they're all trying to be a copy of Depeche Mode in some form or another. And so you get a lot of singers that tend to sound a lot alike. And so whenever I come across a singer like a Martin Bailey or like Christopher Anton or like you in particular, where you have such a unique voice that there's nobody else out there that I can think of, May, and correct me if you can think of anybody else in the indie realm that has a voice that is not necessarily as emotive as yours, but just has that unique tonal or timbre kind of quality to it that your voice has, Max. So I think you've definitely found a voice that certainly works for me. I mean, it's been so wonderful to hear how you get that range of where you'll do that Bowie, like, kind of like a almost like a lazy, dreary, kind of singing, and then you go into that falsetto, and it just you transition flawlessly in between those different characteristics of your voice, and that is not something that's easy to do. So again, massive tip of the hat to you for being able to do that.
Jim, that means a lot. Thank you for saying so. That I think has been the biggest challenge in my musical pursuit here in Sadkin. I had not been a singer before. I tried singing way back in the day when I was talking about the realistic mixer and the tape deck, and I was doing something into a microphone. But then when I started joining bands, I was never the singer. When I started performing out in the Twin Cities, I was the keyboard player. I I was never the singer. But when I moved up here, and when music came back to me, when it came back into my life, I it didn't matter. I could just try singing. And I had been working with a vocalist for a number of years, who is he is a remarkable vocalist, and we worked so closely together in the studio. I would produce and record his vocal takes, and so I gained a deeper insight into vocal characterization, lyrics, intention, and I had a chance to be exposed to some singing that was truly remarkable. And I took that, and when I moved up to Duluth, I was able to work in that direction. I had some things in my back pocket that they were at least guiding posts to get started. And then at that point, it's just about performing, and so much. I didn't When I first started Sadkin, I didn't think I was going to perform, but that has really widened my capacity as a vocalist, and so I'm glad that, I mean, for that one reason alone, that that I went down that avenue with Sadkins. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you are so welcome. And I mean, I can tell you, as somebody who, in the capacity of my radio program with the Soul of Synth Pop, I get dozens upon dozens of music submissions every week from indie artists all over the world. And it's good to be able to have a track that stands out amongst all those others. And musically, most of the time, you're dealing with a lot of bands that have a similar kind of sound. But what really, for me, both as a, for want of a better term, a program director or content creator on the Soul of Synth Pop, and also as a fan of listening to music, I like those. I like voices that really make a track shine. And so, again, it's voices like yours, Max, and like a Martin Bailey and a Jordan Gant of Breathe of My Leaves, that just have that something special in their vocal quality, that you can have the absolute most amazing musical composition, but if you have a shitty voice, or a voice that just doesn't pair well with the feel of the music, then it drags the entire listening experience down. And that goes for whether it's, listening to a recording or seeing somebody perform in person. And I can tell you, from my own standpoint, I never wanted to be a lead singer. I kind of became the lead singer of Eminent Soul by default. Um, but I've always just wanted to be, stick me behind my stack of synthesizers, let me do backing vocals, and I'm happy. But with Eminent Soul, the some of the cruelest criticism that I got from my peers, again, most of them being from Europe, was that, I couldn't sing very well, and I was very, I'm very much aware of that, and naturally self conscious of that. So whenever I come across somebody that, really has something special and unique about the quality of their voice, it's worth taking note of. May, what are your thoughts on that, in regards to how important is that quality of a singer's voice, in regards to providing a really extraordinary listening experience? Is that as important as the music, or perhaps more so?
I think what it comes down to is this person really enjoying what they're doing, and are they having fun with it? You can hear someone who is crooning away and taking themselves way too seriously, and there is something that comes away from that it's not quite as enjoyable as when you hear somebody that maybe they don't have the best voice, but they're having fun with it. And I think that's That's pretty important. I mean, I spend a lot of time outside working in my yard with my plants with headphones on. And my neighbor at one point is like, "Oh, I heard you singing. You sound really good." I'm like, "You probably haven't heard a lot of singing then." But but I don't care. I'm out there and I'm belting it out. And um but there was another artist that, and I will have to dig back through because I listen to music sometimes at night, and it's in my sleep, and I hear something and I wake up and I have to see what it was. And I came across some artist, female, probably an indie rock, indie pop rock, and her voice, she was same thing, just having fun with her voice, playing with it, not trying to stick to this one operatic style. She was just having fun. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think, they probably had like 600 listeners or something. And I said, wow, I bet these people are fun live. And I think that's the other thing is you can do a lot of things in a studio version. You can have your voice fixed, you can have pitch correction and everything. I think when I see somebody live and they're just having fun up there, belting it out, playing, going up and down, doing those transitions, going from I think that's why I like Breaking Glass so much, is because of the transitions that happen in it. Um, I think that's one of the most important things. And I've seen a few local live bands where the vocalist is not quite that good, and then I've listened to their studio stuff and I thought, well, that could have been fixed in production. But they have fun, and that's why I still continue to enjoy supporting them. Some of the ones that I see every once in a while that I'm like, oh, it's them. They're opening for the people that I was actually here to come see, but I still enjoy it. And I think that's the biggest thing is um the people that enjoy what they're doing. When you enjoy singing, it doesn't matter to me how you sound. It really, what matters is the spirit and the heart that you've got in it.
Completely agree, and that's the one thing that I would say that Max, you definitely have in your voice is you have that passion, you have that spirit about you in your voice that just really emotes absolutely beautifully, and it perfectly complements the music that you've composed. And it's not it's not an easy thing to do. And of course, your production skill, putting on my producer hat, um, your production is just absolutely world class. I mean, you are, I will put you up there with the best of not just the indie bands, but some of the established bands that are releasing new music as well. I mean, you are clearly a student of music. You are somebody who is clearly very passionate about the music that they listen to and the music that you create, and that comes across in spades when you listen to the music of Sadkin. And one of the big reasons that that drew me into your music well beyond Mirage. When you released Hologram Hearts, and then the Saints of Catalina, and um, just when the Carrera album finally came out, it was just it was an album that I've absolutely loved listening to, and it's one of those albums that is so rare that you listen to and you want to listen to it from start to finish, because all the songs just perfectly coalesce into this absolutely beautiful and completely fulfilling uh, listening experience from start to finish. And again, that's not something that is easy to do. So you nailed it, my friend. Absolutely.
You two are too much. Thank you very much. That means a lot. And I did work really hard on it. And after I got done working hard on it, I went back and worked more on it. And when I was done working more on it, I went back again and continued to work on it. It took a very, very long time. And just like my singing, my production skills are an evolution. And there are things that I've learned since the record's come out that I wish I had the wherewithal from when I had released it. So it comes back to those very early years when I'm sitting in my bedroom with I finally graduated. A friend who is more well-to-do had a 4-track, and he lent me a 4-track. So I had a 4-track. I had the bass and the guitar, I got a Yamaha PSR, you know, probably from Target or Kmart, keyboard, couple guitar pedals, a cheap generic microphone, and those nights, summer, like school's off for the summer, sitting in my bedroom downstairs and just tinkering away and having so much fun, just exploring the little low treble on the 4-track, and just listening so closely because I wanted my music to sound like the albums I was listening to. Of course they didn't, but it prompted me. I thought somebody made this music. People made this music. People were still making music back then. So I say that tongue in cheek, of course, but
You mean not the content?
yeah. So it just became a chase. I loved it. When I got to high school, I had an opportunity to attend an arts high school, and they had a MIDI recording studio there. And I took elective courses and was granted. I was one of a number of students that could sign in and go use the space. They had a couple Korg M1s. They had a Proteus. They had a Yamaha synthesizer. They had a Mac with a Jimm. We're going to dig deep here. A Vision opcode. Does that ring a bell?
Gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's old school.
Tascam 8-track cassette. So then I was really cooking because I had
But
tracks
did they have a
cassette.
Mark of the Unicorn MIDI timepiece though?
It was Mark of the Unicorn, but I don't remember which one. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep.
So that just fueled it. And then I came up here for college. I was majoring in music at the University of Minnesota Duluth. And they had just gotten a new professor of music who is a jazz guy. And he found out that I had this background at the arts high school. He said, hey, I'm supposed to teach an electronic music course. I don't know how to use it. Can you help me figure it out?
Oh, wow.
And so then I got my foot in the door there, and it was really special. And they had, I think it was the Ensoniq ESQ ones. Those are the ones that came the generation after the SD ones, but before the T series. Is that correct?
I believe the ESQ1 predated the SD one. I want to say the ESQ1 came out along about 85, 86 timeframe.
These were SQ ones.
Or SQ80s.
Maybe, yeah, could be. Don't quote me on this. I think you're more onto it than I am. But I sequenced an entire record on that. And then we drove down to the cities one weekend. I rented an ADAT, brought it up, and I dumped all the tracks onto an ADAT. And then I recorded another little album of my own. And this was just preceded when I finally started playing in proper bands around town. But yeah, so as an extension to all of that, I just love recording. And when it became possible, or that they were saying, who are these people, that you could actually record onto a computer or hard drive, that was very interesting to me, and do so with a fidelity. I bought, because I loved Ensoniq, I bought something called a Paris system.
Oh, good heavens. Yes, I knew that well.
I was
actually used to sell them.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah, I worked in a music store back in 99 and 2000, and that was around the time that the Paris system came out, and that's what we tried selling. I think the entire time I was there, we sold maybe one over the course of about a year and a half.
That might have been me. I don't know if you shipped it out. That might have been me. And so, yeah, then I really got busy. I started learning about these fancy EQs. I mean, the EQs in that weren't bad, but it taught me a lot. You know, they had the onboard compressors, and I don't know. It was all very informative and all part of a process. So recording is something that I considered to be integral to the entire process, especially after I got done citing all of these different producers that I love, that I tried to learn from. I tried to take something away from what they've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much fun. Don't you have fun?
Absolutely. I mean, I go back and I think of all of the producers that influenced me the most, from going back to Alan Parsons with his work with the Pink Floyd and the Beatles, clear up to the guys in the '80s like Gareth Jones and Stephen Haig and Alex Sadkin and um, Rupert Hine. I mean, those are the producers that I aspire to be able to be, and to be as good as they are, to basically take something in raw form and polish it to the extent that it's truly an admirable piece of art. And I'm one of those guys that will be plenty happy to just simply sit in a studio and work on, tweaking a hi-hat or a snare for 4 hours just to make sure I get the right amount of wetness and snap to it, and
Yes.
most people find that to be burdensome and tedious, and I've always really enjoyed studio work. But the thing that I enjoy more than studio work, without question, is performing. I love live performance more than anything. And that's probably why right now I'm having so much fun with my new wave cover band that I'm a part of now, because I get to do just what I've always wanted to do, which is to play some of my favorite new wave and classic rock songs and be stuck behind my stack of synthesizers and not have to be the guy that's out in front, trying to move and sway the crowd. So I'm enjoying it so much, because there's nothing like the thrill of being on stage and performing for an audience, because anything can and will go. Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong, it can and will, and it has many times. But there's just that electric thrill of whether you're performing one of your own songs or whether you're performing a cover. Um, there's just a synergy and an energy that comes from that people that are not performers or that have never experienced that, it's hard for them to understand what you're talking about when you talk about what that feeling and what that energy is like. How about you? Are you big into the performance aspect of it?
Begrudgingly, I started out. I had put out the first Sadkin record, Elan Vital, and it hit with a resounding thud of silence. And
Oh,
in terms
wow.
of reception, it was. But I didn't know. See, I didn't. I might have known how to adjust the EQ with enough skill to get the job done, but I didn't know how to put out a record. So I've learned so much then about what it means to put out a record, um, what it means to connect with people, what it means to develop, finding an audience, all of these things. But I remember being at a Duluth venue, and the record had been out a number of months, and I was speaking with another artist here, and I was just kind of belly aching away. I don't understand. Nobody's listening to the record. People aren't hearing it. I worked so hard on it. I'd really like people to hear it. And she said, Max, you gotta perform live. That's how people connect with it, especially in Duluth. You have to perform live. Otherwise, especially what you're doing musically, the music that I'm doing is so antithetical to what Duluth is known for, being the birthplace of Bob Dylan. We've got this. I don't know if either of you have ever heard of a band called Trampled by Turtles. It's like high energy bluegrass. They're a huge band.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. High energy
Yeah.
bluegrass, kind of like acid polka.
Yeah, yeah, they're huge. They play stadiums and festivals.
Oh,
You're
wow.
sure to see them. They just opened for somebody huge. I can't remember who. Along the
I,
lines of Willie Nelson, but it wasn't Willie. Can't
I
remember.
like thrash grass. That's
They
thrash
get
bluegrass. That's
they,
thrash grass, thrash bluegrass. I really enjoy that. So you
yeah, I
ever
can't
heard anybody?
I can't speak to that.
I'll send you some. It's
I
fun.
How
appreciate
about
that.
bluegrass disco? I like the idea of bluegrass
Oh,
disco.
we
I
are creating some mutants right here in the
I
making.
think it's possible. But yeah.
Right on.
But yeah, so Duluth, Duluth is a very granola town. It's on the right on the point of Lake Superior, and you know, it is very much granola, camping, hiking, biking, listening to acoustic music. If you're a musician, you read Jack Kerouac and you play banjo and you're in a string quartet. And when I rolled out in 2017 with Elan Vital, you can imagine looks on people's faces. Well, very, very much furrowed brows. So I'm kind of in enemy territory here. But to that end, I was at this club downtown moaning away about why I wasn't gaining traction like I thought I might. Like, I really think this is objectively okay music. I really think it should connect with a certain audience. And I don't know how to do that. And she said, well, for starters, you just have to play live. That's that. So I left that night, went home, I slept on it, woke up the next morning and called up two friends and said, hey, I think I have to perform this stuff live. And they said, we're in. So I had a drummer. I was playing in another band here in town, and the following week, the singer showed up. We were rehearsing at my house at the time, and just catching up. And said, "What you up to?" I said, "I'm going to try to play Sadkin." His first response is, "I want in." All right, got a keyboard player, and messaged the bass player that I knew and ran across a guitar player. He was in another band that I thought was pretty cool. They really kind of had this Killers thing going on. And I've always thought the Killers were really pulling from The Cure and Duran Duran. And so I thought, I think this guitar player might get what I'm doing. So I'm going to ask him. And he jumped right in. So I had a 5-piece ready to go. And we worked hard. And now I really love playing. One of the things that I said to myself when we first started was, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to create an atmosphere. I need to hit people over the head with what I'm doing here. I need to make no room for question marks. So I bought a bunch of lights, and I had to learn how to program them. And I found a friend who worked in the theater area up here, and he came over every Sunday, and we would program choreograph light design for every song. We would just cue up a song, and what color is this song? You know, that was the start of every conversation for every song. So we learned how to program lights. And the very first show we ever did, we had an analog style light board, and then we very quickly were able to get software and an old laptop, and then we were able to DMX it. And so we created this like little mini concert feel when we go play. And so now this little circuit tent Sadkin live band goes to play around Duluth and occasionally in the Twin Cities, and we bring our lights with. And we've got a fog machine we call the Dragon. I'm looking at it right now. It's over there in the corner. And we really put on a show. And then that's where all the fun and the joy comes from. We create this environment in an unsuspecting venue, and we go for it, and we have a lot of fun.
And you just touched upon part of the secret formula is give them a show as well as a concert. And that's one of the things that I love about the Pet Shop Boys. Whenever you go see the Pet Shop Boys perform live, you're getting a show, you're getting multiple sets, multiple costume changes, and of course, lighting that is just out of this world. And, you know, whereas you go see some other bands and you get to see them perform live, and even if they have a ton of great energy, if it's just a concert, it's not quite the whole experience if you can give them a show on top of that. I'm sure you probably know what I mean by that, but that's awesome that you're able to pull that off. That's so cool to hear. So let's wrap up the music talk, and then we're gonna talk about some of the more esoteric aspects that we share in common. But you've got a brand new remix of Hologram Hearts that actually just came out today. So tell us about this great new remix. And of course, Hologram Hearts is a track lifted from your brilliant Carrera album. So tell us about how this, what is it, Lost in Stars? Is that what the remix is called?
Close to the stars.
To the
Simply
Stars. That's
exists,
right.
to the stars, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
that. Oh, first off, I love to get a remix done anytime. It goes back to I remember the radio station growing up. Like on Friday or Saturday nights, they would do a club night, and then they would play all the extended mega mixes, the club mixes.
Yep.
And I would hear like an 8-minute version of the Wild Boys, and it blew my mind. Or Relax, or pick your song du jour from that time period. And what I loved is they would strip down different elements, and you could hear things that were otherwise buried in the production of a 3.5-minute pop song. So you had a chance to hear a delay or an echo that was on actually like the kick drum, but you really didn't know that it was even there until you had like this 1-minute break in the extended club mix. All of those things, all of these elements I love. So it was something I thought that would be something I could do with my music, and it would be fun. I would have a lot of fun with it. And even greater is if I could convince others to participate in what that is and have them use their imaginations to come up with alternate mixes. And so I reached out to an artist in the Twin Cities. We were always like 2 degrees of separation. We never collaborated on a musical project before. He's been in bands with people I've been in bands with. He's brilliant. He's creative. He is he has a lot of intention with his work. And I was really excited that he was agreeable to take on remixing Hologram Hearts. And so he did it to the nines. He changed the entire chord progression. He added elements that I could never have conceived. So it was fun to hear him send that mix back and hear all the ways that the song had transformed in this person's hands. And so I wanted to release it and draw some attention to it. So it was important today that we call it out on the social medias and share it with people and elicit a response.
Well, fantastic, and it's a beautiful remix, and I cannot wait to get the get to play it on the Soul of Synth-Pop, because I'm sure my listeners are going to absolutely love that. So again, folks, make sure if you're not familiar with the music of Sadkin, check him out. I'm sure you've got a Bandcamp page as well, don't you?
Yeah, Bandcamp. And then all the streaming apps, and I even have something called a website.
Really? I've heard of these things.
I'm really old school.
Wow, they're still around, huh?
Uh-huh.
Man, wow.
Yeah. So Bandcamp, sadkinsound.com, and then anywhere you can find streaming.
Fantastic. And folks, I cannot give it a strong enough endorsement. I've been a fan of Max's music with Sadkin since 2022 when I first heard it, when I first heard Mirage, and it's just got such a wonderful, unique sound to it. And so what's next on the horizon for Sadkin?
We have some summer shows coming up in August that we're really excited about. We had started, so while I painted Duluth is not very conducive to the type of music I'm doing, there is a select crowd. There are art students, there are art graduates. We kind of are part of this underground scene, and we started creating these events. And the idea was that we would take artists from different mediums and invite them to a big event, and they would become fashion designers. They would come up with looks, and we would do a fashion runway show followed by live performances by a couple bands. So we have that coming up. We have a show coming up on a huge freighter that I'm excited about, a big boat. That should be interesting. I've never done that before. I kind of want to do like a Sade cover, something like that, something kind of 80s yacht rocky.
Come on. If you're playing on a ship on Lake Superior, you got to do Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, right?
I know. Bless his heart, going near the best, but I don't know that I could do that in a way that people would say that was not good. I mean, I just don't think I could do it. I'm not cut from that cloth. May tell him.
You'd end up saying that was interesting. If you
Yes.
ever hear me use the word interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think, given that avant-garde sound that you have, I think you could take just about anything in that yacht rock genre there and play with it and make it all your own. And I think that's the thing about doing covers. You can either do them note for note as homage to the original artist, or take it in a different direction. There's a band that was playing tonight that I would have liked to have gone to see, but I think they probably went on just a few minutes ago. They're called Daphne Kills Fred, and there is a local band, and the lead singer, she has this amazing set of pipes, and they do a really cool cover of Chris Isaak's Wicked Game. It sounds nothing like Chris Isaak's Wicked Game, and it's freaking amazing. So,
What do you have any covers that you think is better than the original?
Actually, a Poptigma Berserk's cover of the Smashing Pumpkins Disarm.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think is
Jim?
better than the original.
I think the Pet Shop Boys Go West is one of the first ones that always comes to mind. I think their cover blew the Village People out of the water to the extent that I think their version of Go West is the definitive version of Go West. And I would also say Hurt by Johnny Cash. In fact,
Yeah.
Trent Reznor has even said he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to perform it live again because Johnny Cash just kind of made that song his own. And those are two covers that right away stand out in my mind that I think are every bit as good or better than the original. Breathe of My Leaves and their cover of Sweet
Oh,
Music Man.
absolutely.
Another one that is just absolutely to this day still blows my mind. Yeah, there's some great ones out there, really.
Indeed. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I second the Pet Shop Boys. I would counter with Always on My Mind. I love the way they do that. And
Yep.
maybe subconsciously going back to my country western days from when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. But yeah, their version of Always on My Mind, I love it. I've got controversial take. Are either of you familiar with the Frankie Goes to Hollywood version of Born to Run?
Yes.
I think
I,
that is outstanding.
I think it's outstanding as well. I think they did a great job on that.
Yeah, they were treading on sacred ground there. Maybe back when they covered it, it hadn't become what Born to Run is in the pantheon of music. When Trevor Horn, how did we miss talking about Trevor Horn?
Right, Trevor Horn.
Yeah.
That actually entered my mind a few minutes ago. It was like, wow, I'm naming off all these great classic '80s producers, and we left off Trevor Horn. What the hell?
Impossible. Shame on us.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I really think that the Frankie Goes to Hollywood Born to Run is remarkable, and I love it. I think it's got more energy. Oh my God.
I'll give you another cover that Frankie did. Their cover of Jerry and the Pacemakers' Ferry Cross the Mersey was also an amazing cover.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think it might be a little sacrosanct for me to say, but I think that the Starbenders, her glam rock band, female fronted, probably I think it's all female, they did an amazing cover of Depeche Mode's Precious, and it's completely different also. And I like it because it's not quite so sad.
They could bring the sad.
Right
David
on.
could definitely bring the sad. Yeah.
Yep. Well, so let's change gears and transition to a rather strange and bizarre topic. Now, those of you out there that follow the Soul of Synth Pop and that know me on Facebook are also aware that I have a new podcast. It's not quite so new. I've been doing it for about 3 years now, but it's been gathering in popularity. And it's a podcast that I do called The Soul of the Unexplained with my very dear friend Roger Stokes. And in that podcast, we cover some pretty non-mainstream topics, I guess you could say. Specifically, We talk about things like UFOs and UAPs. We talk about things like Sasquatch, cryptids, Loch Ness Monster, and of course, Skinwalker Ranch and ghosts and hauntings and all kinds of things like that. And so the neatest thing happened, Max, is I saw a post that you made just this past week where you referred to a picture that you had taken, and there were all these orbs that were in this picture. So I have to ask you, Max, do you by chance have an interest in some of these things, like like the stuff that my podcast covers, like UFOs and UAPs and Skinwalker Ranch and things like that?
More than most people know. I
Nice.
devour this stuff. Right now, I am neck deep in it. I right now in this age of podcasts and YouTube channels, we have a wealth of information that we can assess, we reflect on, listen to what people have to say, and almost all of it is interesting. Some of it you just have to look at it and trust your gut and say, how does this person make me feel as they're talking what they're talking about, and how is it conveyed? And in others, it just, the conviction is there, and you can see it through the screen, you can feel it, or at least I almost can. And it has become a central part of my fascination, so much so that it's become integral part of my creative um, flow. It's Saints of Catalina is about the sightings near Santa Catalina Island,
Oh,
and
wow.
the way that nuclear warships were shut down, also tipping to the nuclear power plants that have been shut down here in the States. And I don't know if the message in the song is naive. It might be, but a lot of my lyrics come to me when I am just when I'm not thinking about it. I run every day. So
Mhm.
sometimes when I'm on a run with my headphones on, listening to rough mixes that are still instrumental, lyrics just start happening. And I try not to get in the way with it. And Saints of Catalina happened exactly that way. And take what you will from the UAP UFO phenomena, the history that it is. Um, we don't know exactly what's going on or what agendas might be. And so I will concede that the song, it begs for us to listen to what they're saying by us shutting down our nuclear armaments. And I don't know if they're trying to tell us something about, hey, just stop that, or we can control that. My song is an indication that we should stop messing around with it. And I hope that's true. But that isn't the only song that deals with that. In fact, I am working on a third record. A lot of songs are underway, and a lot of songs come from this arena. And a lot of my lyrics are cryptic. I'm kind of really outing myself right now, right here on your show. I'm really into it, and I wasn't always.
That's
This is
awesome.
something new. I remember one night when I was playing with all my music gear down in my bedroom as maybe 13, 14 years old, going upstairs, and instead of my stepdad, who sat in front of that TV every night drinking Pepsi and watching Cheers reruns, TV was off, his head down, was in a book. What in the world? And he had me read a little poem at the start of it, something about slipping into the mirror. And it turned out to be Whitley Strieber's Communion.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
I
Right.
sat me down at the table, and he had me read some more of it. He started talking to me about it. Somebody at his work had turned him on to it, and he was captivated by it, and picked up a copy. And um, I I I couldn't. I was beside myself, and I loved Whitley is a great writer. I mean, I didn't know him at the time at all. I wasn't reading. I was reading the D&D Monsters Manual and Player's Handbook. So that was my game back then. But when I got Communion, um, that was a real eye opener. And so I became the kid in school who read the books about aliens. And very quickly, I realized that that wasn't such a good thing to be known as. So, you know, the teasing started, the derision happens, and I kind of tucked it away. Meanwhile, in the back, you know, I had Timothy Good's Above Top Secret, I had Jacques Vallée's Dimension, I had
Oh,
Whitley Strieber's Communion, Transformation. Majestic is a beautiful work of fiction based around the Roswell crash.
mhm.
I love that book. I read that one over and over again. I think that there's a movie in that book. Um, and I kind of got tucked away. I remember when some of my first bandmates found out that I was really into it, because at that time X-Files was really happening. It actually had kind of gone past its arc, and they, you know, everybody's talking, do you believe in these things? I really think there might be something there. And the looks on their faces were like, you better just, you know, not talk about that. And so that I pushed it out of my life for a long time. And then 2017 hit.
2017 in the New York Times article, right?
Can you believe that? Yeah.
That's what did it for me. I mean, I always had a passing interest in the whole UFO and UAP thing, but I didn't really begin to take it as seriously until that article came out. And then I began doing my own research and finding out truly how much extraordinary, verifiable, quantifiable data is out there that backs up what the US government, the Pentagon, finally came out and admitted that yes, these things are real. And granted, 90% or so do have a mundane or prosaic explanation, but there are some that truly defy every categorization that they have. And that led me down this rabbit hole where, I'd always, ever since about 2006, I've been interested in this place here in Utah called Skinwalker Ranch. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm friends with the guys that work out there. I'm friends with a lot of the people that I never in my life would have dreamed crossing paths with. One of the folks that I was fortunate enough to meet last year at this conference that I attended here in Utah was a gentleman by the name of Jay Stratton, who was the guy that was the head of the Pentagon's UAP task force and the ATIP program that was the top secret program that was run for several years. And so I got this guy to sign my Gretsch guitar, and so it's just really it's really cool how much I've discovered and how much I've learned and realized that our world and our universe is so much bigger and so much more interesting than I think most people out there stop and take the time to think about and really truly look into. And that's why, particularly Skinwalker Ranch, which, speaking of which, I literally have to get going in like the next couple of minutes because I have to record my next episode of my podcast about Skinwalker Ranch. But yeah, it led me down this rabbit hole, and I've discovered this whole new community where, I mean, when you just listed off all the authors, Jacques Vallée and Whitley Strieber, I mean, these are guys whose books that I've read and I'm intimately familiar with, and it's wow, man, that just really that's cool. Max, I have to have you come on the Soul of the Unexplained and join May and I one of these times in one of our roundtable discussions, talking about some of this stuff. Just spend a full 2 hours just talking about that particular topic. I'd love to have you come on as a guest. What do you say?
Jimm and Mae, I would love to do that. I would love to do that. One of the biggest reasons is you would be the only people I have a chance to talk to this stuff about.
Right on.
It's been so, exclusive to my inner dialogue, and listening to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and
Oh yeah.
the Really podcast with Tom and Dave. Oh my God, so good.
Oh
Uh,
heavens, yes. Yeah, we we
so
we got to make this happen. I'll tell you what, if you're okay with it, I'm going to send you a Facebook friend request, and we have to connect with this stuff, man.
yes,
Totally.
yeah, yep. And so yeah, so that picture quickly as possible. I do think that there's a correlation between what people call the UFO faction of strangeness and the ghost faction of strangeness. There does seem to be something there, especially when you start digging in on what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch and a couple other places. There's definitely some things weaving in and out. So I don't consider them too far apart. And the glue that seems to be holding it together is consciousness, and that gets me.
100%. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know it, man. Wow.
And
So
and
let's do
for
it. I can't
and for
wait.
reference, oh, I was gonna say, for reference, if anyone can see this picture here is the one that Max is talking about. Is there's these orbs, you can see these little dots that don't look like camera lens flares, and some of them, a couple of them seem to actually have tails. They have a little
Yeah.
trail that they were creating. So,
And different
that's
directions. Yes.
it's
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you with one more thing, Max, as we wrap this up. Have you read the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon?
By George Knapp and Colin Collier, not yet. I've listened to them do talks about it on like 3 or 4 different YouTube posts where they're in front of an audience talking about it, but I need to. I really do need to. There are a number of books that I need to get my hands on. I heard Lou's got a book coming out called Imminent.
Imminence, yep.
Yeah, that's gonna, I'm sure that Richard Dolan's got a book coming out about USOs. He's threatening like 600 pages, and that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then Diana Pasulka. I gotta get back in Cosmic. There, see, I've only been, chasing this on all the podcasts that I listen to, the things I am able to glean on YouTube, a little bit on the actual show, Skinwalker, the Jeremy Corbell movies. But I'm not really a person of a lot of means, so I've not been spending money on all these different books. But I need to get some of these in my hands.
Right on. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, we have to make the podcast thing happen. Max, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday night to have this wonderful conversation with Mae and I regarding your music and the amazing influences that you have, and about so many other things. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better as an artist and as a musician, as a songwriter. And again, folks, I cannot recommend strongly enough to go check out the music of Sadkin. His album is called Carrera, and it's got so many wonderful tracks on it. And of course, again, there's the brand new remix of his song Hologram Hearts that just came out today on June 7th. So be looking for that, folks. Mae, any closing thoughts or remarks from you?
Just mostly very fascinating to learn how you have this focus, this, on production, and how that is so early, and, that you actually picked up on that. It's kind of like not just looking at the front, the people, the image, maybe the sounds, but kind of going onto the backside and finding that glue. And that's the best way I can think, is because as a collage artist, I do a lot of playing with glue, and I can do that too. Just play with different glues and not actually getting the art done, but just playing with that process. And I think that's a really fascinating approach that you've taken, because you don't see a lot of people necessarily focusing on that themselves, the artists themselves focusing on it. So I think it's really fascinating. I'm really, really glad that you shared all of your, the way your tastes and your styles developed. And I think that's really fascinating and neat. That's a word I keep using, fascinating. So
you two are the best. Mae, Jim, thank you so much. Thanks for giving this some oxygen, for indulging me and talking about this. It's such a small niche of people I get to discuss this stuff with. So between new romantic, new wave, and synth pop to the far ends of consciousness and high strangeness, this has been a real treasure on this Friday night. So thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, sir, and cannot wait to bring on the soul of the unexplained. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. If you like what you saw, then please hit that subscribe button somewhere down there, and the like bell as well, and you'll be notified every time Mae and I do another one of these new Soul of Synth-Pop Spotlight Series interviews. So, as I always say, folks, love one another, take care of one another, be nice to bunnies, and never let a drum machine, vocoder, or synthesizer go unwanted or unloved. Adopt one today and eat as many tacos as you can get your hands on. I will see you next time, folks. See ya.